Hello, sixth graders. Congratulations on just finishing your first sixth grade benchmark. I just wanted to say, shake it out, guys. Just finished one last test. Welcome back, sixth grade. Take that, Mr. Amadio. So, we are going to work today on preparing for an essay you'll be writing tomorrow and then grading some student samples of essays so that you know what each grade looks like. So follow along on your paper while I read this prompt. We're not going to write this prompt today, but you're going to imagine that you are so I can teach you how to brainstorm for it. The prompt you see tomorrow looks a lot like the one here. Write an original story about what happens the next morning when the detectives arrive again to continue investigating Mary's husband's murder. In your story, be sure to use what you have learned about the setting and the characters as you tell what happens next. Something really specific here. It says, in your story, use key details about setting and characters so that it makes sense with Lambs to the Slaughter. So your story is going to start it's almost like how we gave you the Sumer narrative and gave you some guidelines. These are your guidelines here. You write a story, but it has to be the next morning when the detectives arrive again. But it's really important that your setting and characters make sense with what we've already learned. So here's what I mean. What should be a better way to begin your story? Is it A, Mary Maloney woke up to the sound of a heavy knocking on the door. Knock, knock, knock. It reminded her of the sound her husband made when he slammed against the floor. Remember to act natural, she told herself. Act totally normal because you didn't do anything wrong. She went downstairs and answered the door. Or is B a better way to start your story? Mary woke up and slipped on her slim size 0 sweatpants. She was a thin and slender woman who was constantly in those sweatpants because the house was always so darn cold. All right, correct. So you guys can notice right here that this option A has a bunch of details that really are true to the story that we read, okay? Because you're kind of finishing the story and just taking it place. So it references the husband slammed against the floor. And remember, it said bang when he fell. And also this inner dialogue where it says, remember to act natural, that's what Mary was doing, okay? And then what are a couple things that are wrong with B? I'm going to read B again. Listen closely. Mary woke up and slipped on her slim size 0 sweatpants. She was a thin and slender woman who was constantly in those sweatpants because that house was always so darn cold. So even though this seems like a creative start to your exposition, what are a few reasons why this could not be a good answer? Right, so keep those things in mind anytime you are asked to write an original story. So whenever you are brainstorming and writing a story out for a narrative, what should your brainstorm now look like? Right, it should be a plot mountain, just like we did for our Sumer narrative. So everyone go ahead and draw a plot mountain right here. Sorry, it's kind of hard for me to do on this paper, but just go ahead and draw one of those plot mountains on your paper. And then down here at the bottom, you should have exposition written. Sorry, guys, just sort of pretend that I have a triangle right here, and this is the exposition. So you know that when you start your exposition, your prompt already gave you some things. I started to write my exposition, I should think, okay, so I know that exposition is about setting and characters. So what things does it already give me in the prompt? Okay, it says that the detectives arrive, and I know that there's Mary Maloney. So for exposition, my characters have to be the detectives and Mary Maloney. Now, what about setting? The detectives arrive again. Okay, so I can imply that it says they're arriving at Mary's house, the same house as last night. So also Mary's house. So that's going to be stuff in my exposition. It would not make sense if you started and you said, Mary woke up and you start telling the story about Mary being in jail because they found her. No, that's not what the prompt wants. Use it to help you start your exposition and then keep your story going from there. You can be creative, but make sure you use details about what we read. So one last thing. This is how your essays will be graded on this benchmark for 3 things. The first one is reading comprehension. That will ask, how well did you understand the text that you just read? So that stuff I just talked about, like if you start talking about Mary Maloney and forget that she's pregnant and say all this crazy stuff and forget that, then you'll get a low score on this because it's showing me that you're not demonstrating what you just read. And another thing, we know Mary Maloney is totally crazy. So if you kind of show her inner dialogue and she's kind of normal and chill, that shows that you didn't really know what you read. This woman is a crazy person. The second thing you'll be graded on out of 4 will be written expression. How well did you organize your thoughts? Are all paragraphs indented and is every plot part a different paragraph? Guys, to be honest, this is still the part we're struggling with the most. This is bringing down most of our grades. If you are still writing in one big long paragraph and not really breaking in important parts of the story, that's going to hurt your grades a lot. Also, remember to make sure you start a new paragraph anytime you use dialogue. And lastly, language conventions. Did you use proper grammar and spelling? So that's stuff like periods at the end of sentences, quotation marks around dialogue, using capital letters at the beginning of sentences, and that's graded out of 3. Again, if you have a great story and did a great job, but you don't even capitalize the word I, then I'm going to give you a 0 out of 3 for this, because we should always capitalize the word I, and that's a pretty simple thing. So make sure that the entire time you're writing your essay tomorrow, you keep these 3 things in mind. So just now go ahead and independently read, or if you, for whatever reason, are still confused about this, go back and watch the video again. But if you're done, independently read and wait for further instructions.